Hi, this is Kendall Boyson, professional life and recovery coach, and you're listening to Encouragementology, the practice of instilling hope. Hi there. On this show, we are going to be talking about feeling behind when your best is enough. We've all been there if we aren't there now. That overwhelming feeling of not being as far along in life as you think you should be. The society we're living in now isn't helping either. With technology, we have the ability to peek in, creep, or troll anyone's virtual life to start forming our own opinion on how the other half lives. It's all perception, and we're buying it hook, line, and sinker as reality. Look how successful everyone else is. I must be behind. Does that give us the motivation to bring out our competitive side? For some, yes, but for most, it just makes us feel sad and bad about ourselves. It's demotivating because it looks like we are worlds apart and there is no way to catch up. So guess what? I just won't do anything. What if you were exactly where you need to be? What if self-acceptance gives you the motivation to grow? Want to dig a little deeper? Well, if you're tuning in for the first time, let me give you a window into the structure so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. On Encouragementology, we look for positive alternatives to some of life's challenges. We're walking through this thing called life together. Well, maybe not together since we are going at our own pace and encountering our own set of obstacles. But we are all here working it out, learning, growing, and sharing. I love to give and look for a different perspective. Sometimes we get so rooted in the way that we think. It isn't that we're resistant to new ideas, but if it ain't broke, right? See, until we hear something new, we may not even know we need a new perspective. I love aha moments for things that seem so simple, yet we've overlooked them our whole lives. Sometimes these come as revelations, and more often through trials and tribulations. The wound, the lesson, the scar. These are what make us unique in our journey, and these are what we need to share with others. Your lesson could open up the door and share a new perspective with someone who just doesn't see it yet. So I will share some of my insight mixed with the ideas and opinions of experts I follow so that we can share, learn, and grow. At the end, we will sum it all up, plucking out some golden nuggets that you can apply to your life and share with others. I hope you do share Encouragementology with someone who needs to hear that they're worth it, that their dreams matter, that they deserve more, and that you care enough to make sure they hear it. You can find this episode and all others at encouragementology.com. Perception. The double-edged sword. You might say to someone who's stuck in their way of thinking, you need a new perspective. Many times that means, I want you to see it my way. But for so many of us, it's true. We do need a new perspective and a new way of looking at the world, what's around us, and at ourselves. But perception can be easily skewed when we accept what we think we see as reality. Dr. Jim Taylor, psychologist and professor at the University of San Francisco, wrote, "Perception is not reality" in an article for Psychology Today. Here is a dictionary definition of perception. The way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, a mental impression. And then here is the dictionary definition of reality. The world or the state of things as they actually exist. Existence that is absolute, self-sufficient, or objective, and not subject to human decision or convention. Clearly, perception and reality have very different meanings. The former occurs entirely in the mind, in which mental gymnastics can turn any belief into reality. The other exists completely outside of the mind and can't be easily manipulated. To conflate perception with reality is to reject the Enlightenment and hearken back to the Middle Ages. Perception is not reality. But perception can become a person's reality. There's a difference there, because perception has a potent influence on how we look at reality. Think of it this way. Perception acts as a lens through which we view reality. Our perceptions influence how we focus on, process, remember, interpret, understand, synthesize, decide about, and act on reality. Our tendency is to assume that how we perceive reality is an accurate representation of what reality truly is, but it's not. The problem is that the lens through which we perceive is often warped in the first place by our own genetic predispositions, past experiences, prior knowledge, emotions, preconceived notions, self-interest, and cognitive distortions. The challenge we face with our own thinking, as well as the thinking of others, is how to ensure that perception remains close to reality. This alignment is essential for us to live in the real world, find consensus with others, and maintain the individual, governmental, and societal structures that are necessary for life as we know it. Here are a few tips to keep in mind. Don't assume that your perceptions are reality. Remember, they're just your reality. Be respectful of others' perceptions. Guess what? They may be right. Don't hold your perceptions too tightly. They may be wrong. And admitting that takes a lot of courage. Recognize the distortions within you that may warp your perceptions. Seeing them will better ground your perceptions in reality rather than the other way around. Challenge your perceptions. Do they hold up under the microscope of reality? Seek out validation from experts and credible others. Don't just ask your friends, because they're likely to have the same perceptions as you. Be open to modifying your perceptions if the preponderance of evidence demands it. Right? Don't be so rigid in your mind. I was in web marketing for several years, and I can remember sitting across from a mom and pop shop uttering these exact words. You may not have the money to change your facade or resod your lawn, but you can be as big and rich as you want to on the web. It's all perception. You drive up to a business that has holes in the parking lot, a building that needs repair, an outdated decor, and what do you think? Well, you think they aren't doing very well. They must not know what they're doing. But you land on an up-to-date, slick website offering the same services, and you immediately have more respect. They're successful, maybe even cutting edge. Don't you think the same scenario can apply to personal lives portrayed on the web? Do you think the person who's obsessed with selfies is so confident in the way they look that they just had to overshare with the world? No. Possibly they're the ones in need of validation and someone to tell them how attractive they are, so they can feel something, overcome something, or just be able to look in the mirror. I say perception is surface level. It's only one layer of the story. But instead of challenging and digging deeper to understand and form our opinions, we're limiting our senses to only our sight. What we see becomes our reality. I saw it, so it has to be true. But remember, communication is 55% body language and 38% tone of voice. Are we saying this no longer matters? Someone posts a picture in full glam, standing next to a sports car, and behind an obscene amount of filters, and they are successful and rich, no questions. They're doing well for themselves. Just as you can't judge a book by its cover, you can't accept reality in a photograph, nay, social media pic. Ray Jacobson wrote an article about social media and self-doubt for the Child Mind Institute, but I think it applies to any age struggling with self-doubt. Look, says Sasha, a 16-year-old junior in high school, scrolling slowly through her Instagram feed. See? Pretty coffee, pretty girl, cute cat, beach trip. It's all like that. Everyone looks like they're having the best day ever all the time. Magazines and advertising have long been criticized for upholding dangerously unrealistic standards of success and beauty. But at least it's acknowledged that they are idealized. The models wearing size 0 clothing are just that, models. And even they are made up, retouched, and photoshopped. These days, the impossible standards are set much closer to home, not by celebrities and models, but by classmates and friends. With social media, teens can curate their lives, and the resulting feeds read like highlight reels, showing only the best and most inviolable moments while concealing efforts, struggles, and the merely ordinary aspects of day-to-day life. And there's evidence that those images are causing distress for many kids, and I would say many adults. Donna Wick, doctor, founder of Mind to Mind Parenting, says that for teenagers, the combined weight of vulnerability, the need for validation, and a desire to compare themselves with peers forms what she describes as a perfect storm of self-doubt. She's so thin. Her grades are perfect. What a happy couple. I'll never be that cool, that skinny, that lucky, that successful. Sometimes, says Sasha, looking at friends' feeds make you feel like everyone has it all together but you. The fallout from these unrealistic standards becomes more dangerous once kids reach college, where they face higher stakes, harder work, and a largely parent-free environment. The pressure to look perfect, to impress new peers, not to speak of friends and family back home, can even be greater. After a recent spate of college suicides, researchers at Stanford University coined the phrase duck syndrome. The term refers to the way a duck appears to glide effortlessly across a pond, while below the surface its feet work frantically, invisibly, struggling to stay afloat. Several students who have died have projected a perfect image on social media. Their feeds packed with inspirational quotes and filtered images showing attractive, happy kids who seem to excel with minimal effort. But behind the digital curtain, they were struggling emotionally. For kids experiencing anxiety or depression, carefully edited feeds can act as a smokescreen, masking serious issues behind pretend perfection and making it harder for parents or friends to see that they need help. It's important to remember that just posting edited pictures online or pretending your life is a little more glamorous than it actually is not in itself a problem, says Jill Emanuel, a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. Social media alone is unlikely to be the heart of the issue, but it can make a difficult situation even harder. Teens who've created idealized online personas may feel frustrated and depressed at the gap between who they pretend to be online and who they truly are. If you practice being a false self 8 hours a day, it gets harder to accept the less than perfect being you really are, says Dr. Wick. And as we all know, there's no harsher judge of a teen than themselves. Another more prevalent problem, says Dr. Emanuel, is that for some teens, their social feeds can become fuel for negative feelings they have about themselves. Kids struggling with self-doubt read into their friends' images what they feel they are lacking. Kids view social media through the lens of their own lives. If they're struggling to stay on top of things or suffering from low self-esteem, they're more likely to interpret images of peers having fun as confirmation that they're doing badly compared to their friends. Sasha and her friend Jacob, who's 15, agree that the constant exposure to social media has had an impact on how they view their peers and themselves. It's like you know it isn't making you happy, says Jacob, of the pictures of his friends that are posted on Instagram, but you still look. Even the knowledge of these images mask serious problems doesn't seem to alleviate the pressure that they cause. Sasha said, I knew a girl who had an eating disorder. We all knew it. It got so bad that she ended up going to a treatment center. But when she put pictures of herself on the beach looking super thin, everyone liked them anyway. Logically, she knew the pictures weren't current and the girl was very ill, but that didn't stop her from feeling a twinge of jealousy. I remember thinking, I wish I looked like that, and then being horrified at myself. Sasha acknowledges the trouble of liking images that in this case provided dangerous validation. It's like we're saying, good job. And, we can say it to ourselves, oh, they're only going to post the best pictures, the best stuff about their life. They're not going to post the real stuff. But consuming that day in and day out, we really start to believe those things. So as I go through this list of some things that we could do to help our children differentiate perception from reality, I think we could use these tips too. So I found it helpful for any age to put what we see on social media and how we react in perspective. So don't turn your dial down through this part. If you have a social media account, you need to listen. So take social media seriously. Don't underestimate the role social media plays in the lives of teenagers or ourselves, says Dr. Wick. The power of a visual image is so strong. It's distorting. Many teens, she says, never knew a world where social media didn't exist. And for them, the things that happen online, like breakups, likes, negative comments, are all very, very real. When you talk about social media, make sure you're really listening and be careful not to dismiss or minimize your teens' experiences. We could say, oh, that's just what they wrote, but they're believing it. So we need to take that seriously. Encourage them to think outside of the crop box, right? When you talk to your child about social media, encourage them to explore it in a more critical way. A great way to start is try to ask them if they think maybe the image has been cropped or edited out for the perfect picture and why. That can lead to larger questions. Do you think your friends are really the people they appear to be online? How about you? What's the purpose of posting a photo? That's a great question. We shouldn't just have somebody take 50, 100 selfies and not question why are they posting that many images. What is it about getting likes that feels good? Does looking at social media affect your mood? That's important to ask them because it's a time waster and sometimes it's not a positive time waster. So studies have shown that children feel more depressed. They might be feeling down and unconnected and they get online to connect and they feel even more disconnected. Model a healthy response to failure. Kids have to get the message that it is okay to fail, says Dr. Wick. And not only that it's okay to fail, but that showing it is okay too. If parents hide their own failures, kids are less likely to be okay with anything less than success. When things don't work out as you planned or a project goes awry, show your child how to accept it with grace. Let kids know that failure is a part of how we learn to succeed, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and let them see you pick yourself up again and try again. Praise and show effort. Effort is something to be proud of, says Dr. Wick. It can't be said enough. Parents should let kids know that showing their work is something to be praised, not hidden. When your child has worked hard on something, praise their efforts no matter what the outcome. It's always helpful to examine how comfortable you are showing your own efforts, especially those that don't end in success. Be proud and open about your own work. It sets a powerful example for your child. Go on a social holiday. If you're worried that your child is getting too wrapped up in social media, try taking a social holiday. This means everyone, says Dr. Wick. If you're asking your child to take a break, practice what you preach and pledge to stay off the media as well. It can be every bit as hard for parents to unplug as kids. Trust people, not pictures. Don't rely on social media to let you know how your child is really doing. They may post smiling selfies all day long, but they might seem unhappy or sound unhappy on the phone. Don't let that go. Make sure they know it's safe to talk to you by encouraging them to share their feelings and support whatever they do. Reassure them that you're not disappointed and let them know you're proud of them for reaching out. I'm so glad you called. It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed. I'm here for you and I love you. Let's talk through it. Now, I love technology, and I hope my constant reminders on encouragementology are not painting the wrong picture here. We need a healthy balance in all that we do. I'm just shining a light on how easily things can get off kilter and what can happen as a result. Being aware is the first step. Sometimes we just feel bad and we let it go at that. We never dig deeper or peel back the layers to see why. Could it be what we're consuming and at the rate in which we're consuming it? When you feel overwhelmed or behind, have you asked yourself why? In a cause and effect trial, should you remove causes to judge the effect? Or do you just throw up your hands and blame this mean old world and the hand you've been dealt? You have the power to take control of your reaction to any action. I read a book with the most profound advice, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I often quote each of the agreements separately when they apply, and they do often. The 4th agreement is to always give your best. Now that sounds simple, but it's much more complex the deeper you dig. You see, today you may have it all to give, but tomorrow you may not. So if you always give your best, then you're giving what you have on that given day and nothing more. We see giving as 100%. Imagine a full glass up to the brim. That's all the glass can hold. So it's 100%, right? But what if that glass was only half full? How could you give your best or 100%? Well, if you give the whole half, then you're giving all that you have to give at that moment, and that is your best. It's hard to conceptualize because we've been brought up to this idea 100% is everything to the fullest. If you don't have a full glass, then you don't have enough. How often do you have a full glass? What happens on the other days? You feel bad and less than perfect, behind, losing? But what if you gave your all? Not it all, but your all every time. Wouldn't you feel great knowing that you gave it your all? Would that change your outlook before the day even started? Today, I'm going to give it my all. No matter what happens, I'm giving it my all, and that's enough. I want you to think about giving it your all tomorrow. Just think about it in a new light. It's all perception. We're really covering some of the things that we might think is one way, and just with a slight twist of perception, we can see it a whole nother way. Also, perception in that we can look at something and believe it to be reality when in fact it's not. So remember when I said perception, kind of a double-edged sword there. But we talked about giving it your all and when your best is enough. I love that concept from Don Miguel Ruiz in the 4 Agreements. Always give your best. And that is whatever you have to give at that moment. Boy, that changed perspective for me. And I knew if you give it 110% and you still fail, well, what else could you have done? You gave it your best. And that's always been my philosophy in everything that I've done. But this gives me a new way of thinking about it. You know, if I have a day that I just feel off, I'm not going to just throw up my hands and say, well, this day is a wash. I'm going to give the best I have to give in that day. And that's going to be enough. But I want to start pulling it together, giving you some nuggets that you can walk away with. And I found an article by Henrik Enberg for the Positivity blog, 13 Things to Remember When You Don't Feel Good Enough. Number 1, you don't have to listen to your inner critic. You can shut it down. The inner critic could sometimes motivate you to work smarter and do better, but most often it just tears you down. When you start hearing it, say it out loud. Stop. I'm not listening to you today. You can really talk to it out loud. Sometimes our mind just goes off in a ditch, right? And we start thinking about all the ways we can't do something. Stop it. Pull yourself back. Number 2, find the exception to open up your mind again. When you're lost in a snowball of thoughts of how you're not good enough, it can be tough to change your headspace to a more positive one. You may think to yourself you're not doing a good job at work, or that your relationships aren't so great. When you get such thoughts, just ask yourself, what's one small exception to that? Sometimes we bury the good with the bad. So if you can find a sliver of hope, one thing, one exception that you can start building on, you can turn that around. So it's not all of the negative, but the one positive that you're actually focusing on. Number 3, make a list and then take a few minutes to soak in your positive memories. Take out a pen and a piece of paper or a blank memo note on your smartphone and simply think back to times and situations where you did feel good enough, or to times when you may not have felt quite good enough at first, but still took action and did well and even better than you had expected. Write some of those memories down. Those are great to revisit. And again, because we end up burying the positive with the negative, it's good to dig deep, find these positive memories and focus on them. When you're feeling less than good enough, you can jump back over to your note or your journal and pick yourself right back up by remembering those wonderful memories, and make sure you put a lot of detail. The more detail you have, the easier it is to recall this memory. Number 4, stop getting stuck in the comparison trap. When you all too often compare yourself to others, to what they have, what they've done, then you're getting yourself stuck in this comparison trap. This destructive habit tends to feed that feeling of not being good enough. Because this habitual comparing is not a game that you can win. There will always be someone that's better than you, that has more or has achieved more somewhere out there in the world. Focus on gratitude and your own accomplishments. Really hang your hat on those things. What have you done that you're proud of? Focus on those things. We are not in a competition. We are all on our own journey in life. Number 5, what people share online is usually a highlight reel. In the past, you had to sit down and think about what your friends and acquaintances may have been up to, or perhaps turn on the TV to see how someone famous lived. Nowadays, it's often right there as soon as you pick up your smartphone or sit down in front of your laptop. It's harder to avoid the comparison trap than it ever was 10 or 15 years ago, for sure. But one thing to keep in mind that really helps when it comes to social media is what people are sharing is really just the highlight reel of their life. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you think that's how their lives look all the time, then you're likely fooling yourself and making yourself feel worse without any real reason. Because they usually share just the happiest, most fun and exciting moments of their lives, as would you. No matter who they are or where they've been, they have bad days too. They get the flu, they eat food they shouldn't, they don't exercise with any consistency, they have their own worries. So don't fall into the trap of comparing your low points of everyday life with someone else's highlight reels. Number 6, you may not want to check social media more than once a day, right? This can really help you keep it in check. And as we talk about all the time, a healthy balance. Sometimes we've become pretty habitual with checking our phone. It's a diversion. It's a time waster. So we get 1 minute to ourselves, and all of a sudden we're checking our social feeds. We don't even care. A lot of times we'll look up and say, I don't even know why I'm in here. I don't even care, right? Set yourself a time limit. Start breaking the habit. Number 7, you can always start small with a right thing string to change how you feel. So this is idea of how to get things going in the right direction. Like, do something deep down you think is right. Like, give a genuine compliment to someone at work. Take 3 minutes to unclutter your workspace. Help someone out with a bit of information they're looking for. Then add another thing that you think is the right thing to do. Have a banana instead of candy or potato chips. When you feel like judging someone on social media or TV, try to find kinder and more understanding point of view. Then add another thing and another. Build a small string of doing the right things for, half of your day. When you've added the right thing to your string, no matter how small it may be, make sure to take a couple of seconds to pause and appreciate the good thing that you did. Number 8, celebrate all wins, not only the big ones, because then you'll wait a long time between celebrations, right? When you hit those goals. But it feels good to celebrate even the small things. One small step forward is still one small step forward, and you need to take such steps no matter what lofty goal you want to reach. So celebrate those wins too in some way. Maybe with a pat on your back, a tasty or delicious snack, or a quiet break out in nature. Number 9, it really helps to let it out. Keeping these thoughts bottled up can make you spiral out of control. Letting them out can help you look at things from a more grounded and constructive perspective. Here are 3 ways to let it out. Vent about these thoughts with someone close to you. But remember, I always say ask permission. Don't just unload on someone else. You have no idea where they are in their day, and your negativity or frustration might really bring them down. So ask for permission. Do this for a little while to release the pent-up tension and to figure things out. Talking it out with a friend allows them to bring in their own perspective, and that accountability partner we always talk about can really be helpful here. Your friend can ground you in reality again so that you don't make a horrific mountain out of a molehill. And the 2 of you can perhaps come up with a plan for how to start improving upon the specific situation if you're not feeling good about yourself. Journal about it. So great to write these feelings down. Just get it all out on paper, right? Not an email that you might push send. Number 10. Don't beat yourself up. There are much better ways to motivate yourself. This will not correct your feeling or motivate you in any way. In fact, it will probably cause more harm in the long run. So find another way to motivate yourself that won't push your respect and love for yourself down. Like, be kinder and more constructive when you talk about yourself. Let it out, as we mentioned before. Look for small or tiny steps you can take today to improve the situation that you're in. Start building a right thing string. And remember that just because plenty of people beat themselves up all the time, or because you've done it many times in the past, doesn't mean that it's the healthiest or best way to move forward. Number 11, focus on and take responsibility for the process. If you focus on the process instead of always hoping for a certain result, then you'll be more relaxed. The pressure you put on yourself will be greatly reduced, and the feeling of not being good enough will diminish too. When you focus on the process, then you take the responsibility for showing up and taking action. No matter if that's at work or building your own business or at the gym. Results will come anyway from the constant action and from you focusing on what your process is and adjusting it along the way. Number 12. What someone has said or done to you may not be about you. Guess what? That's another one of the 4 agreements. Don't take things personally, right? The criticism or verbal attacks you may have received this morning or during the past year may not have been about you at all. So don't make the common mistake of thinking it's all about you. Someone close to you at work or at school could simply have had a bad week, a month, or a year. Or maybe they're in a bad marriage. They're dissatisfied with their career. They're carrying around a lot of baggage, a lot of negativity. You remind yourself of this when you don't feel good enough because of what someone else might have said about you, and realize that you don't have to carry their baggage and their negativity. And number 13, you can and may need to make some real changes in your environment to feel better. Whatever we let into our minds will have a big effect, no matter if those influences are positive or negative. So you may need to make some changes in your environment to feel better about yourself. Otherwise, you're always trying to move forward while powerful weights are holding and dragging you back. A simple start to that process of step-by-step changing your day-to-day world is to ask yourself this: what are the top 3 sources of negativity in my life? It could be someone close to you at work, a social media account, a website or forum you visit every week, or a TV show, podcast, music, magazine, or so on. And then ask yourself, what can I do to spend less time with these 3 sources this week? Come up with one or a few action steps for each of the sources if possible. And focus on taking action to reduce the influence and time you spend on at least one of these sources this week. And then, during the next 7 days, spend the time you've now freed up with the more supportive, uplifting, and positive resources. Now, this doesn't necessarily just mean people. This could be what you're consuming. So if you turn on the news every day or turn on a news broadcast in your newsfeed, and it's always bringing you down, turn it off. Maybe look for a more positive podcast, an uplifting book. Maybe you should talk to a motivating friend. Try to break those habits and just see if you might feel better, right? We just continue walking around like zombies, never pushing back as to why we're feeling this way. Don't accept that you're feeling behind and you don't feel good enough. You've got to push back on that. We are all unique individuals on our own journey. We all deserve the very best life has to offer. So we shouldn't accept anything but the best. We are getting bombarded with advertisements of all kinds. You can't walk or look in any direction without someone vying for your attention. And that can get a bit skewed. You know, we can start hearing something. I've heard it so much right now. Someone will say, oh, somebody said this and they said this. And you want to say, who is they? You know, let's use that correctly. Who are they? Who are these people saying all this? We just end up consuming this information, turning it out and regurgitating it as fact. And when it comes to us personally, we need to push back and make sure that's truly our opinion and how we feel. And if not, we need to dig a little bit deeper. We are in charge of our lives and we need to take the wheel, right? Instead of letting someone else drive our opinions and drive our perception, we need to push back and do a little bit more discovery. That doesn't necessarily mean Googling to find someone else's answer. It means sitting with ourselves for a while and really contemplating how we feel about things. Don't take the things we see as face value. We need to do a little bit more questioning, looking at it from different angles, right? So we talked a lot about that and really how to dig down into perception and the difference between perception and reality. You know, we say it, perception is reality, but we found out that's not necessarily true and how we might be able to challenge that a little bit more. We also talked about just the stereotypical things that we see on social media and the dangers there. You know, we talked about how teens view social media and how they interpret what they see around them and how damaging that can be to them as they develop. And I think that's true for any adult as well as a child growing up in that. I mean, many of us did not have the internet growing up, but we can get pulled in just as easily by the things that we see. You know, a lot of communication now is just surface level and we don't see what's behind the intent. And we're missing a lot of powerful cues there. Pick up the phone, call someone, make a date to go visit. Don't just take what someone puts on social media as how they truly feel. Whether that's a child or an adult, we really need to have healthy communication and keep up with each other a little bit better than that, right? We also talked about giving your all. And I really want you to walk away with that. I want that to be the way that you feel tomorrow. Think about that glass. Now, we always say glass half empty, half full, but I'm asking you to think about it in a little different way. Think about it being full enough, right? If it has half the amount in it, but we give all of that, then we're giving our all. It's all we have to give today, and that is enough. That's going to give you, hopefully, a whole new perspective for the way that you attack your day. We also talked about what you could do if you're not feeling good enough. Don't just accept that. Start shushing that inner critic. Start reaching out and talking to people. Finding out maybe you're comparing yourself. Maybe that's the big thing. Maybe you got sucked into the trap again and you need to push back and potentially unplug, right? Maybe restrict yourself. Limit the amount of time that you spend in other people's world and focus on your goals. When you put all of your energy, you channel everything going in your own direction, behind your own goals, you will be shocked at how far you can go in very, very little time. So I challenge you, look within first. Before you compare your life and list of accomplishments with what you see, find out who you are and what is most important to you. Today, give your best, whatever that may be. I know you can do it. Thank you for listening to Encouragementology with Kendall Boyson, where we find positive ways to handle some of life's challenges.
Stumbled through until the path was clear. That's when I found you.